Imagine walking onto a car lot with just hundreds of unsold vehicles, right? Just collecting dust in the summer heat.
Right.
And you offer the dealer this totally reasonable, say, 10% discount on a sedan that's been sitting there for months.
Yeah, totally logical.
And he just literally laughs you off the lot.
Oh, man.
I mean, that makes absolutely no sense, right? Supply is high, demand is low, so prices should be dropping.
It's just basic economics.
Exactly. Well, if you are looking at the housing market in Jack County, Texas right now, and keep in mind, we are heading into late May 2026, that is exactly the mathematical paradox you are walking into.
It really is.
You have a market flashing every classic signal of a massive supply glut, yet the sellers are just holding the line like it's the peak of a boom cycle.
Yeah, it completely betrays standard economic logic, at least on the surface.
It really does.
Because, we're looking at this highly localized ecosystem that is openly defying the usual mechanics of supply and demand. And what makes this so critical to unpack right now, for you listening at home, is the timing of it all.
Right. Memorial Day.
Exactly. Memorial Day is just around the corner. And for anyone tracking seasonal trends, this holiday traditionally acts as the starting gun for the summer real estate season.
Oh, absolutely. The weather turns, the school year wraps up, and you usually see this massive injection of liquidity into the market.
Right, because families want to execute their moves before August.
Yeah, before the new school year starts. But the data we are pulling today, it tells a really different story.
It really does.
We're looking at the Jack County May 2026 real estate market report alongside the Q1 2026 Entray ICE data, which is pronounced net trays, by the way.
Okay, check on the pronunciation.
Thanks. And we also have localized insights from David Peet over at Peet Realty.
Yeah, Peet Realty is a great source for this area.
For sure. And all this data suggests that the starting gun for this summer might just be, well, a blank.
Yeah, a total misfire.
The traditional rules of the summer surge just seem to be entirely suspended in this specific region.
Which is wild.
It is. So today, our mission for this deep dive is to tear apart this data stack. We need to figure out how it is statistically or economically or even just logically possible that home sales have plummeted, right? Inventory's piling up. And yet the sellers who do manage to close are walking away with almost their full asking price.
It's a fascinating contradiction. And to really get to the bottom of it, we have to start by establishing the specific geography.
Right.
We have to look at the underlying economic DNA of Jack County. Because if you try to map Dallas or Fort Worth suburban metrics onto this area,
the data's just going to lie to you.
Exactly. It's going to completely mislead you.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a quiet, rural county in north central Texas, which is anchored by the city of Jacksboro.
Jacksboro. Right.
And the transactions here, they just carry a completely different weight than a master planned community out in the suburbs.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is the farm and ranch factor, right?
Precisely.
We aren't talking about a subdivision where 50 houses share 3 identical floor plans and you can just run a comparative market analysis in your sleep.
No, not at all.
When I was looking through the notes from Peet Realty, and, David Peet has been navigating these specific counties for over 12 years, it really struck me how this isn't just a housing market.
Right. It's something else entirely.
It's an agricultural microeconomy. You have residents out there raising British white cattle.
Which requires highly specific land.
Exactly. You have properties built specifically to cater to equestrian lifestyles, like people keeping retired Tennessee walkers that used to ride the North Texas LBJ Grasslands trail system.
The LBJ Grasslands reference is actually a perfect lens for understanding the valuation out here.
How so?
Well, proximity to a major trail system or, having acreage that supports a specific breed of cattle like the British Whites, it completely decouples a property from standard price per square foot metrics.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah, because a suburban buyer, they're paying for the house.
Right.
The structure itself.
Right, the granite countertops and the media room.
Exactly. But a Jack County buyer is often paying for the utility of the land.
They're looking at the dirt.
The dirt, the infrastructure. They're asking, how is the fencing? Are the pastures cross-fenced for rotational grazing?
Right.
What is the condition of the loafing sheds or the equine facilities?
So I kind of look at Jack County like a highly specialized rural boutique.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Thanks. You don't have mall-level foot traffic, right? You aren't getting 1,000 buyers a week walking through open houses on a Sunday.
Definitely not.
But the inventory you do have is highly specific. It's often tied to a larger lifestyle or even an agricultural business, and it carries a really significant price tag, which, brings up an immediate red flag for me when we start looking at the monthly data.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Right, like if we are analyzing a market with this level of hyper-specific, high-value inventory, how do we prevent, say, one multi-million-dollar cattle operation from just entirely blowing out the monthly median?
What's fascinating here is that you have zeroed in on the absolute greatest hazard of analyzing rural real estate data.
The skew.
The massive skew. The statistical noise generated by small sample sizes can be deafening.
Wow.
Think about it. If Jack County only has a handful of closings in a given month, and one of them happens to be a sprawling premium ranch with luxury equine
It
facilities,
just wrecks the curve.
it violently drags the average and median prices upward. And if you, as an analyst or a buyer, don't know how to filter that out, you might mistakenly conclude that the entire county just appreciated by 30% in 4 weeks.
Which is terrifying, honestly, because if you are a buyer or a seller trying to time the market based on just a single monthly report, you are basically flying blind.
You really are.
A bad data read could lead to a massive mispricing of your own property. You could list way too high and just sit there.
That is the danger.
Okay.
And it is precisely why we have to lean so heavily on year-to-date and quarterly trends.
To smooth out those violent fluctuations?
Exactly. The Intresis data is fantastic. It's incredibly detailed. But the sources themselves implicitly warn against panicking over just a 30-day window.
Right. A month is just too short of a snapshot.
Yeah. So by looking at the broader Q1 2026 data, or the year-to-date figures through April, we can filter out the noise of that one massive ranch sale.
And start to track the genuine underlying current of the market.
Exactly.
Okay, so with that filter applied, let's wade into the actual supply numbers.
Let's do it.
Because looking at the April 2026 data, we are seeing a massive supply shock.
It's pretty striking.
The county has entered deep structural buyers territory. Right now, as of April, there are 67 homes listed for sale.
Now, to some people, 67 might not sound like a lot.
Right. In a major metro, 67 is nothing. That's like one neighborhood. But for Jack County, that represents a 15.5% increase in raw inventory compared to the exact same time last year.
Which is a huge jump for a rural market.
Yeah, it really is.
If a 15.5% increase in raw listings is a very solid indicator of a shifting market. But the metric that truly exposes the leverage dynamic right now is the months of supply.
Right. Let's break that down for the listener.
Sure. So we know the real estate industry considers 6 months of supply to be the absolute baseline of equilibrium.
The sweet spot.
Exactly. At 6 months, neither the buyer nor the seller has the upper hand. If no new homes hit the market, it would take exactly 6 months to sell everything.
Okay.
Now, if you drop below 6 months, buyers start fighting over scarce inventory. That's a seller's market.
Like we saw a few years ago.
Exactly. But if you go above 6 months, the leverage heavily shifts to the buyer. And Jack County right now, it's sitting at 13.2 months of supply.
That number is just staggering. 13.2 months.
It's huge.
That is up more than 21% from last year when they were already elevated at 10.9 months.
Right.
We are talking about an inventory level that is more than double the threshold for a balanced market.
It is a massive buildup. Think about the psychological weight of that for, say, a local real estate professional.
Or even just a resident driving through Jacksboro on their way to work.
Exactly. You are seeing the same for sale signs fading in the Texas sun month after month.
Yeah, the grass is growing up around the signposts.
Yes. The inventory isn't turning over. It is just accumulating.
Okay, so if I am a buyer tracking this data, right, and I am looking to secure a property before the 4th of July, seeing 13.2 months of supply tells me I hold all the cards.
It certainly feels that way.
It tells me the market is heavily saturated and sellers should theoretically be sweating.
Right. They should be eager to make a deal.
So does 13 months of supply mean I can just swoop in and demand half off?
Well, you would think so, wouldn't you?
I would. But as we hinted at earlier, the actual transaction data paints a much more complicated picture of how that supply is being handled.
It really does.
Let's look at the actual volume of transactions because the pipeline is running incredibly dry. In April 2026, exactly 4 homes closed in the entire county.
4 closings for a whole county.
In a 30-day period.
It's almost unbelievable.
It is. That is a 66.7% drop from the 12 closings that happened in April 2025.
A huge percentage drop.
Yeah. And my first instinct when I see a 67% drop in sales volume is to assume the bottom just fell out of the market entirely, like the demand just evaporated overnight.
I completely see why the math leads you there. But knowing the rural data dynamics we just discussed, I have to step in and apply the brakes.
Fair enough. Slow me down.
Yes, a drop from 12 to 4 is mathematically a 66.7% plunge. And there is no sugarcoating the fact that 4 closings is an undeniably quiet month.
It's basically silent.
Right. But you have to smooth the curve. This is the exact sample size illusion we were talking about earlier with the prices.
Oh, okay.
We cannot declare a total market collapse based on a difference of just 8 houses.
Okay, fair point. The sample size is just too small to call it a crash.
Exactly.
So let's zoom out like we talked about. If we look at the year-to-date data to get a clearer picture of the first third of 2026, there have been 18 closings in total.
Okay.
And compared to the same 4-month period last year, which saw 24 closings, we are looking at a 25% decline.
And that 25% decline is a much more accurate reflection of the current reality.
It's less dramatic, but still significant.
Oh, it is a very meaningful slowdown.
Yeah.
A quarter of the transaction volume has just disappeared from the market.
Right.
It confirms the undeniable sluggishness of the area. But a slow deceleration is a completely different economic beast than a 67% freefall.
Right. It's the difference between a leaky tire and a blowout at highway speeds.
That is a fantastic way to put it.
But the data doesn't just look backward at what closed, right? It gives us a look at the immediate future.
Yes, the pending sales.
Exactly. The pending sales numbers for Jack County are basically telling us that the summer season is going to be a wash.
It's looking really bleak.
Year to date, there are only 15 pending contracts.
Wow.
Yeah, that is down 44.4% from last year's 27 pending contracts.
See, what's fascinating here is that the pending sales data is the ultimate forward-looking indicator.
Because it tells us what's coming next month.
Exactly. It represents the actual pipeline of the industry. These are buyers and sellers who have signed a contract and are currently grinding through the friction of, inspections, appraisals, and financing.
The escrow period.
Right. So if your pipeline is running full in April and May, you're going to see a robust, healthy season of closings in June and July.
Makes sense.
But with pending sales down by more than 44%, the math is already written on the wall for the summer of 2026.
The deals just aren't there.
No, they aren't. The closings in June and July are inherently going to be depressed because the contracts simply aren't in the system right now to produce them.
Think about the downstream effect of that 44% drop in pending sales on the local economy, too.
Oh, it's massive.
It isn't just the real estate agents who feel the pinch. It's the local title companies in Jacksboro.
Yep.
It's the independent home inspectors, the rural appraisers, the contractors who do the make-ready repairs before a
The
fail.
whole ecosystem suffers.
Exactly. When the transaction faucet gets turned down to a slow drip, that entire microeconomy takes a massive hit.
It really does.
Which brings us to the most pressing question, right?
Oh.
Why? Why has the faucet slowed down so dramatically?
That is the million-dollar question.
And the sources point us straight to the macroeconomic forces at play, specifically the lock-in effect.
Yes, the lock-in effect is essentially the invisible hand choking this market right now. We cannot evaluate Jack County's local data without acknowledging the broader national context of interest rates.
You can't ignore the Fed.
Exactly. The reports highlight that rates are remaining stubbornly elevated, with trend lines showing them holding firm above the 6% mark.
And, while a 6 or 6.5% rate might look perfectly healthy if you zoom out and look at the last 40 years of American monetary policy.
Right, historically it's not terrible.
No, but it feels incredibly punitive to anyone who secured a mortgage between 2020 and 2022.
Precisely. You have an entire cohort of homeowners who refinanced or purchased during the pandemic era, and they locked in historic rates at 3% or even 2.75%.
It's like free money.
It was. And this creates a psychological and mathematical standoff. Imagine a homeowner in Jack County who might casually want to move.
Right.
Maybe they want to downsize and move closer to town, or maybe they want to upgrade their acreage. But then they look at the spread between their current 3% rate and a new 6.5% rate.
Here's where it gets really interesting because the penalty for moving is staggering.
It is.
If you sell your house and buy a new property of the exact same value, your monthly interest payment practically doubles.
Yep, just to live in the same priced house.
It's like a game of musical chairs where the music has slowed down to a crawl, but instead of everyone rushing to grab a seat, Nobody wants to stand up in the first place because the chair they are currently sitting in is heavily subsidized and incredibly comfortable.
Right.
They look at the other chairs on the floor, realize the entry fee to sit in one is doubled, and they just decide to stay put.
You know, I'd actually push back slightly on the musical chairs idea, or at least modify it a bit.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, in musical chairs, the music eventually stops, and there is a sudden, chaotic scramble for seats, right?
Oh, right.
Here, the music is playing a slow, agonizing dirge, and there is no scramble at all.
Ah, I see what you mean.
The standoff isn't about a scarcity of chairs. Remember, we have 13.2 months of supply. There are plenty of chairs.
Right, 67 of them just sitting there.
Exactly. The issue is strictly the cost of movement. Unless a seller experiences a profound life event, a job relocation, a divorce, a major health crisis, they are mathematically incentivized to hoard their 3% mortgage.
So they become accidental investors, or they just pull their mobility out of the market entirely.
That's exactly what's happening.
And this lack of movement is what creates the stagnation. And normally, basic economics tells us that if a market stagnates and 13.2 months of inventory builds up, prices have to drop to induce demand.
They have to come down to clear the inventory.
Right. But when we look at the pricing data for Jack County, the numbers completely betray that logic.
It's wild.
The Q1 2026 Entry S data shows the median sales price at $260,000.
Okay.
That represents a massive 20.1% year-over-year gain for the quarter.
A 20% gain.
Yeah. And the average price was even higher at $311,692.
That Q1 data is a perfect example of market resilience just completely defying expectations.
Truly.
Seeing a 20% gain in the median price while transaction volume is actively falling is deeply counterintuitive.
It makes no sense on paper.
Right. But what it tells you is that the properties that are moving are holding significant value.
But then we hit the April numbers, and we see that whiplash we talked about earlier.
Oh, the April dip.
Yeah. The April-only median price dropped 23.1%, down to $232,500.
Ouch.
Because of that heavy drag in April, the year-to-date median has now settled at $252,500.
Which is down, right?
Yes, it's down 15.8% from last year's $300,000 mark.
Wow.
So Q1 is up 20%, April is down 23%, and YTD is down 16%. If you are tracking this, you are getting statistical whiplash.
It is violent volatility, and it is exactly why the county-level median is a dangerous metric to rely on in isolation.
You can't just look at the top-line number.
No, you can't. To understand why the numbers are thrashing around like a heart rate monitor, we really have to dig into the hyperlocal zip code level NTRIAS data.
Let's do it.
Because Jack County is not a monolith.
Yeah.
The divergence between different zip codes is where the real story lives.
Yeah, I am looking at the NTRIAS data for two specific zip codes right here, and the contrast is just wild.
Let's hear it.
In zip code 76458, the median price for the first quarter shot up an astounding 57.6%.
Almost 60%.
Oh, right, landing at $260,000.
Right.
But if you literally just drive over to zip code 76486, the median price dropped 19.3%.
Night and day.
But here's the kicker. Even with that nearly 20% drop, the median price in 76486 is still sitting at $545,000.
Okay, so that is the farm and ranch factor playing out in the math in real time.
How so? Break that down.
Now, zip code 76486, with a median of $545,000, even after a 20% drop, clearly carries a higher concentration of those sprawling, acreage-heavy properties.
The big equestrian estate.
Exactly. So if one or two premium equestrian estates close in Q1 of last year, it sets an artificially high baseline.
Oh, I see.
When this year rolls around and maybe only standard residential tracts close, it looks like the market crashed 20%.
But it didn't really crash.
No, the type of property being sold just shifted.
Right.
Conversely, in 76448, a 57.6% jump to $260,000 likely indicates a few new constructions, or perhaps completely renovated properties hitting the closing table and pulling that lower end median way up.
So it's not that every house in that zip code appreciated 57%. It's just that the mix of houses that happened to sell were nicer.
Exactly.
So if you are a listener out there trying to value your own property, you have to ignore the noise of the countywide swings.
You really do.
You have to look at the year-to-date softening. That slow slide to $252,500 YTD is the most reliable metric because it accounts for both the robust Q1 and the sluggish April without overreacting to either.
Exactly. The YTD median is the true compass right now.
Mm-hmm.
It acknowledges that prices have softened slightly down 15.8% year over year.
Yeah.
But it proves there is no free fall.
Which brings us to the final and frankly most fascinating contradiction of this entire deep dive,
The pricing paradox.
the negotiation nuance. Because we've established that Jack County is sitting on 13.2 months of supply.
Right.
We know pending sales are down over 44%.
Yep.
We know buyers have massive structural leverage, so why aren't they using it to extract massive discounts?
That is the big question. The logical assumption is that buyers should be dictating the terms of every single deal.
They should be calling the shots.
Right.
But the data says otherwise. In April 2026, the sellers who actually made it to the closing table received 97.4% of their original list price.
Almost 100%.
Yeah, that is actually up 3% from last year.
Wow.
And even if we look at the smoothed out year-to-date data to be safe, sellers are still capturing 94.3% of their asking price.
That's incredibly strong.
It is. So I have to push back on the idea that buyers are in control.
Okay, let's hear it.
If I am a buyer and I know your house has been sitting on the market for months and I know you have no other offers because the pipeline is dry, why am I still paying 97 cents on the dollar?
It's a fair question.
Why aren't we seeing distressed lowball offers closing at 80% of asking price?
This raises an important question, and it's where pure mathematics fails us. We have to rely on behavioral economics.
Psychology over math.
Exactly. The data is telling us a crystal clear story about the psychology of the Jack County seller right now.
Which is what?
They simply are not desperate. You have to remember the lock-in effect we discussed. These sellers are sitting in their comfortable 3% mortgages.
Right, they aren't hurting.
They aren't bleeding cash every month. They don't have to sell. So if a buyer comes in with an aggressive lowball offer, the seller just says no.
They just walk away from the table.
They have the luxury of time.
So the sellers are effectively functioning as a cartel of unmotivated participants.
That's a strong word, but yeah, in a way.
They are setting a price floor simply by refusing to participate in a race to the bottom.
Yes, and the data shows that the market isn't fundamentally broken. It is just highly selective.
Selective, right.
The sellers who are successfully closing at 97.4% of their asking price are the ones who are pricing their homes perfectly from day one.
But they aren't overreaching.
Exactly. They're abandoning the aspirational peak pandemic pricing models. They're aligning with current market value and letting the property shine.
Because buyers have so many choices, right?
Yes, 67 listings, remember.
Right. So they aren't going to waste time haggling with an overpriced seller. They will just move on to a property that is priced correctly and write an offer near asking.
Exactly. They reward realistic pricing.
And we know these correctly priced homes are still taking their time.
Oh, for sure.
The days on market for Q1 is sitting at 66 days.
Which is over 2 months.
Right. So even a perfectly priced home is taking over 2 months to secure a buyer. It is a slow, methodical matching process.
It is incredibly methodical. If a home sits well past that 66-day mark, there is absolutely room for negotiation.
Sure.
But buyers walking into Jack County expecting to leverage the 13 months of supply into a 30% discount are going to be severely disappointed.
The blood just isn't in the water.
No, it isn't. The systemic distress required to force those kinds of fire sales simply doesn't exist in the local ecosystem right now.
So what does this all mean? Synthesizing all of this data from Peet Realty and Entress, what is the reality for you, the listener, operating in Jack County in May 2026?
It's a landscape of patience.
Exactly. If you are a buyer, you have the ultimate luxury: time.
You don't have to rush.
You have inventory to browse. You don't have to waive your inspection contingencies or write a blind offer 15 minutes after a property hits the MLS.
Thank goodness those days are over.
Right. But you must understand that the sellers you are negotiating with are insulated by low interest rates.
They have a shield.
They are holding firm on price, and they aren't going to give away the farm just because you ask.
Pun intended.
Exactly. And if you are a seller, your entire success hinges on your day one pricing strategy.
You have to get it right immediately.
If you test the market with an inflated price, you won't get lowball offers. You will get ignored.
Crickets.
You'll simply become a permanent fixture in that 13.2 months of stagnant supply. You really need a trusted local partner to thread that pricing needle.
The standoff is truly fascinating, but I want to leave you with something to consider that extends far beyond this summer.
Ooh, okay. A final thought.
Yeah. We spent this time discussing how interest rates are holding sellers back today, creating this lock-in effect, right? But think about the long-term generational implications of this.
Okay, where are you going with this?
What happens in 3, 4, or 5 years when the generation currently hoarding those 3% mortgages reaches a stage in life where they want to age in place.
Ah, like instead of managing large rural acreages, they want something smaller.
Right. But if it remains mathematically punitive to sell and buy something smaller, they might just permanently adapt their existing
Oh,
properties.
no, wow. They just hire help or build a smaller footprint on the same land.
Exactly. Are we looking at a permanent restructuring of rural housing liquidity?
That's a scary thought for buyers.
It is. If that turnover permanently stalls, the concept of a starter ranch or entry-level rural acreage might just disappear entirely.
That is a profound structural shift to keep an eye on, and it really changes how you view long-term holds in these rural markets.
It absolutely does.
Well, as always, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the numbers.
It's been great.
Whether you are navigating the murky waters of rural real estate or just trying to stay sharp on the macroeconomic shifts happening in your own backyard, remember that true market knowledge is the absolute best asset you can own. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.